I'm 90 years old today, and I'm sitting in my garden looking at something that means more to me than any bank account ever could. My hands are weathered, my back aches when I stand, and my memory isn't what it used to be. But when I walk through what I've built here over the last 40 years, I feel like the richest person alive. And I want to tell you why. Because what I learned might change how you think about leaving something behind for your children, your grandchildren, and generations you'll never even meet. When I was your age, maybe in my 50s, I made a decision that nobody around me understood. I had money, a decent job, a comfortable life. My family kept asking me, "Why are you spending thousands of dollars planting all these trees? Why are you digging those strange gardens? Why aren't you saving this for retirement, for a bigger house, for a car?" My own son sat down with me once and said, "Dad, you're wasting your money on something you won't even enjoy when you're old." I remember that conversation so clearly, and I remember how it made me think. But something deep inside me knew the truth that he couldn't see yet. Money disappears. A bank account that seems huge when you're 50 is gone by the time you're 80. I've watched it happen to people I knew. They saved carefully, they invested, and then they died. And their children fought over it, or spent it, or it just vanished into the world. But a food forest? A food forest grows stronger every single year. It becomes more productive, more beautiful, more generous with every passing season. And it doesn't cost anything to maintain once you understand how nature works. Let me tell you what happened in my life that taught me this truth. I grew up during harder times. Times when my family grew much of our own food. My mother kept a garden, not like the neat rows you see in magazines, but a wild, productive space where everything fed everything else. Apple trees stood next to nut trees. Berry bushes grew beneath them. Vegetables and herbs filled the gaps. She never called it a food forest. That wasn't even a term people used then. But that's exactly what it was. One year, when I was about 8 years old, something happened that I never forgot. My father lost his job suddenly. I remember the fear in the house. My mother was worried, my father was stressed, and we didn't know what would happen to us. But something remarkable occurred. Nobody went hungry, not once. My mother's garden fed us completely through that entire crisis. We had fruit from the trees, nuts for protein, berries for vitamin C, vegetables from the ground, and herbs for flavor and healing. We were poor in money, but we were abundantly rich in food and security. Other families on our street faced the same job losses. But they suffered because they had only money, and money had run out. We suffered emotionally and mentally, but our bodies were nourished and strong. That lesson stayed with me my entire life. When I was in my 50s, I kept thinking about that memory, and I realized I wanted to create the same security for my own family, but bigger, better, and designed to last not just for my children, but for generations yet to come. A food forest that would be producing food long after I was gone, that would need less and less work over time because it would become more natural and self-sustaining. That was my dream. So I started small. I bought a piece of land that wasn't expensive because it was considered rough and unproductive. It had poor soil, it was rocky, and nobody wanted it. Most people would have tried to make it like a farm, plowing it up and using chemicals and fighting nature. But I did something different. I worked with nature instead of against it. The first year I studied the land. I watched how water flowed, where the sun hit longest, where shade naturally fell. I observed what plants already grew there, because those plants were telling me what the soil wanted, what conditions existed. I planted nitrogen-fixing trees first, things like my nodding black locust and certain acacias. I studied the local ecosystem to understand what had thrived there before. I collected seeds from wild plants that had deep roots, plants that brought nutrients up from the earth. I wasn't gardening, I was engineering an ecosystem. Then I started the layering. This is the heart of a real food forest, and it's where the magic happens. Instead of planting things in flat rows, I created vertical layers, just like a natural forest. At the top were the tall nut and fruit trees, my chestnuts and walnuts and apple and pear trees. These would be the long-term investment, trees that would produce for 100 years or more, trees that my great-grandchildren would harvest from. Below them I planted smaller trees, my fruit trees like plums and cherries and peaches. These would mature faster and feed the middle generation. Below those I planted bushes, my berry bushes and currants and gooseberries. And below those I had a thick layer of perennial vegetables and herbs, things that didn't need to be replanted every year. Then, filling every gap, I planted climbing plants and nitrogen-fixing ground covers. And here's what people don't understand about this system. Everything is connected. The tall trees create shade that the smaller plants love. The nitrogen-fixing plants feed the hungry fruit trees. The deep roots of some plants bring up minerals that shallow-rooted plants can use. The fallen leaves create mulch that feeds the soil. In the first few years, people would drive past and laugh at it. It looked messy and wild. It didn't look like a proper garden or a proper farm. My son would shake his head, but I knew what I was building. I was creating a perpetual system, something that would work like nature actually works, not like we think we need to force things to work. By the 10th year, something magical happened. I barely had to work anymore. I spent my weekends there, yes, but not fighting the land. Just harvesting, just enjoying it. The system had become so established that it basically maintained itself. Fallen leaves were feeding the soil. Pests were being managed naturally by the diversity of plants, by the birds and insects the forest attracted. Moisture stayed in the ground because of all the organic matter, and the productivity was extraordinary. By the 20th year, I was barely doing any work at all. I would walk through my food forest maybe once a week, sometimes less, just to enjoy it and harvest what was ready. And the amount of food it produced was stunning. Apples, pears, cherries, plums, hazelnuts, walnuts, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, currants, gooseberries, asparagus, rhubarb, artichokes, herbs of every kind. I could feed my entire family, my whole extended family, from that one piece of land. And the quality of the food was beyond anything you buy in a store. Apples with real flavor, nuts with nutritional density that makes your body feel alive, berries that taste like concentrated sunshine. But here's what I want you to understand, and this is the deepest part of my message. The real value wasn't the food itself, though the food was incredible. The real value was what that food forest taught my children and grandchildren. They learned that security doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from skills, from knowledge, from a relationship with the land and with nature. They learned that nature is infinitely generous if you work with it instead of against it. My son, who laughed at me in the beginning, eventually got it. He brought his children to the forest when they were young, and they would spend hours there, learning, playing, picking fruit. He started to understand that what I was creating was not just food, but a legacy of security and wisdom. Now he's in his 60s and he's starting his own food forest on his property. He's telling me he wishes he'd started sooner, that he's watching me as I grow older and realizing that what I built is going to feed his family and his children's children for generations. And that's what a food forest really is. It's a gift to the future. It's not something that expires like money. It's not something that can be lost or stolen or spent foolishly. Every year it gets better. Every year it produces more. Every year it teaches new lessons to whoever tends it and harvests from it. I want to tell you about the practical side of this now. The things you need to know if you're going to start your own food forest. The most important thing is to understand that you don't need to be wealthy. You don't need to own lots of land, and you don't need to wait for perfect conditions. A food forest can start in a small space. I've seen them in backyards, in alleyways, in small plots. The principles are always the same, but the scale changes. Start where you are with what you have. If you only have a backyard, that's enough. If you have an acre, that's wonderful. If you have more, even better, but you don't need much. The key is starting now, not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect piece of land. I made the mistake in my mind of thinking I had to have a big property. What I didn't realize is that any property would do, and anything you plant now will feed your grandchildren. The second principle is observation. Before you plant anything, spend time understanding your land. Where does water go when it rains? Where does the sun hit all day? Where is there shade? What grows wild there already? This information is gold. Don't fight it. Use it. If water naturally collects in one spot, that's where your moisture-loving plants will thrive. If one area is shady, that's not a problem. It's an opportunity to grow shade-loving plants that you might not have thought of. The third principle is diversity. Don't plant just one type of food or one species of tree. Plant varieties. Grow different apples, different berries, different nuts, different vegetables. This diversity is what makes the system resilient. If one pest discovers one plant, it affects only a small part of your forest. If one disease strikes one tree, you have dozens of others. If one variety of apple has a bad year, you have 5 other varieties producing. This is how nature works, and this is how we need to think about feeding ourselves. The fourth principle is patience and trust in nature. Your first year will look rough. Your second year will look better. But by your 5th and 10th year, something shifts. The system starts taking care of itself. Don't be tempted to overmanage it, to add chemicals, to fight the natural processes. Let it be wild. Let it be a forest. That's where the magic lives. And then there's the spiritual and emotional side, which is the part that matters most. When you create a food forest, you're making a promise to the future. You're saying, I was here. I cared. I left something behind that will feed and nourish people I'll never meet. Every time you plant a nut tree, you're planting hope, because you know that nut tree probably won't produce heavily for 7 or 8 years. But you're planting it anyway, not for yourself, but for your children and grandchildren. This is what I've come to understand in my 90 years of life. Money is temporary. The things money buys are temporary. But a forest, a living system that heals the soil and feeds people and teaches wisdom, that's permanent. That's eternal. That's how you become immortal. Not through being remembered in history books, but through leaving behind something that keeps giving and growing long after you're gone. I think about my mother sometimes, who taught me this lesson without ever planning to. She's been dead for 40 years now. But every time I taste an apple from a tree that I planted because I remembered her garden, she's still alive in me. Every time my grandchild picks a berry from a bush I planted 40 years ago, my mother is still nourishing them through me. This is what a food forest really is. It's a physical manifestation of love extending forward through time. It's security without debt. It's health without pharmaceutical dependence. It's beauty without needing maintenance or chemicals. It's productivity that increases year after year instead of decreasing. And it's a gift that costs less to maintain as time goes on because the system becomes more efficient and more intelligent the longer it exists. I'm 90 years old and I don't work much anymore, but my food forest still feeds me. It still feeds my family. It's becoming an even more beautiful and productive place as I grow older and less able to maintain it intensively. In a few years, when I'm gone, it won't diminish in value or productivity. If anything, my family will manage it even better because they'll understand its value in a way that only comes from having it in their lives for many years. If I had spent all those thousands of dollars on a bigger house, that house would need constant expensive repairs and maintenance. If I'd spent it on a car, that car would be rusted metal in a junkyard by now. If I'd put it in the stock market, well, I've watched markets crash many times in my 90 years. But every single dollar I spent on my food forest, every hour I spent learning and building and planning is still producing. It's still working for my family. It's still working for the future. So here's what I want you to know, what I want you to feel in your heart as I share this with you. Whatever your age, whatever your situation, it's not too late to start. If you're 40, you're getting an incredible head start. If you're 60, you still have time to build something that will feed your family for decades. If you're 20, you could build a food forest that sustains 5 or 6 generations. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. I didn't know this when I was younger, but I understand it now. Every single day that you wait is a day that your future family is waiting for the security and the gift you could be creating for them. Start small if you need to. Plant 3 trees this year, 5 next year. Learn 1 new technique each season. But start. And as you do this, understand that you're not just creating food. You're creating security. You're creating resilience. You're creating a relationship with the land and with nature that will feed your soul as much as it feeds your body. You're creating something to be proud of, something real, something that matters. I've spent a lifetime accumulating some money, some possessions, some accomplishments that I'm proud of. But when I'm sitting at sunset in my food forest, watching my grandchildren pick fruit and laugh, watching the birds that have made this place their home, watching the soil get richer and darker every year, I know that this is my real wealth. This is what I'm leaving behind. This is how I'm making a difference in the world. So don't think about leaving money behind. Money will be spent, divided, lost, or forgotten. Think about what you can create that keeps giving. Think about the gift of food security, of natural abundance, of a living system that improves with age instead of deteriorating. Think about feeding people you'll never meet, teaching lessons that will echo through generations, being part of something bigger and more important than yourself. Your children don't need your money, not really. What they need is your wisdom, your legacy, your love expressed through something that lasts. And a food forest, a 100-year forest, a forest that your great-great-grandchildren will still be harvesting from and tending and loving. That's the most powerful legacy you can possibly leave. As I sit here near the end of my life, I'm grateful for every choice I made that led me to this moment. But I'm most grateful for the choice I made 40 years ago to build this forest. Because I know that long after I'm gone, it will still be feeding my family, still teaching them, still connecting them to the earth and to each other and to me. I hope that something in my story, something in what I've shared, awakens something in you. Maybe it's the dream of security without debt. Maybe it's the desire to connect with nature. Maybe it's the deep human need to leave something behind that matters. Whatever it is, I hope it inspires you to dream about what you could create with your hands and your time and your love. I hope you plant a tree this spring, maybe just one, and think about who will be eating the fruit 100 years from now. This is how we change the world. Not with money or with grand gestures, but with our hands in the soil, planting hope, building systems that outlive us, creating legacies that feed the future. This is how we become part of something eternal. This is how we matter, not just today, but forever. If my story has touched your heart even a little bit, if you felt even a spark of inspiration about the food forest you could build for your family's future, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel, because this kind of old wisdom, this knowledge of how to live in harmony with nature, how to create security and abundance without depending on systems outside ourselves, this is knowledge that matters more than anything else. It's knowledge that will sustain you and your family, no matter what happens in the world around you. Subscribe so you can keep learning, keep growing, keep building toward a future of true abundance and security. Share this with someone you love, someone who might be searching for a way to leave something real behind. Because together, we can change how humanity thinks about legacy, about security, about what it really means to be wealthy. Thank you for letting me share my life with you. Thank you for listening. And I hope to see you again soon, here in this space where old wisdom meets new hope, where we remember together how to live in real abundance, how to care for the earth, and how to leave the world better than we found it.